Eleanor had always believed that home was more than bricks and wood, more than windows and doors that creaked against the winter winds. To her, home was laughter, echoing down a hallway, the warmth of her father's hand as he told her bedtime stories, the smell of bread rising in the kitchen on Sunday mornings. But ever since her father had passed away, that meaning had withered, like roses left too long in the frost. The house on Willow Lane no longer felt like a haven. Its grand staircase, polished floors, and antique chandeliers had grown cold, lifeless. The woman who ruled it now, Vivian, had made certain of that. Vivian was not cruel in the obvious sense. She did not scream or throw things across the room. She hurt in subtler ways, with carefully chosen words that sliced deeper than knives, with cold glances that left Elena shrinking into herself. At gatherings, she would smile sweetly to others while pressing her nails into Elena's arm under the table. And though Vivian wore elegance like perfume, beneath it seethed a bitterness Elena could never fully understand. That evening, the bitterness boiled over. The air in the dining room was thick with silence, broken only by the soft clink of Vivian's wine glass against porcelain. The table was set for two Vivian at the head, Elena at the far end. It was absurd, Elena thought, how a table meant to seat 12 could feel so suffocating when it was just the two of them. "You're late," Vivian said, her voice as smooth and polished as the pearls around her neck. Elena swallowed back her retort. She had been working an extra shift at the small bakery in town, scrubbing flour from her hair as she rushed home. She hadn't eaten since dawn, and her stomach knotted at the sight of the untouched roast on the table. "I stayed after work," Elena answered quietly. Vivian's lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. "How? Industrious of you. Though one would think a girl who has been given everything might not need to toil like a servant." "I wasn't given everything," Elena said, before she could stop herself. Vivian's gaze sharpened. "No, perhaps not. What you had was your father's indulgence, and now, with him gone," she sipped her wine. "You're under my roof, my responsibility." The word responsibility dripped with resentment. Elena looked down at her plate, her appetite gone. "I don't ask for much," Elena whispered. "That's precisely the problem," Vivian said, setting her glass down with a soft click. "You don't ask. You take. You take sympathy. You take space. You take time and energy. You've clung to this house like ivy on stone, suffocating everything around you. And frankly, Elena, I'm tired of it." The words landed like blows. Elena's heart hammered in her chest. "This is my father's house," she said, her voice trembling despite her effort to sound strong. Vivian's eyes flashed, cold and unyielding. "Your father is gone, and this house belongs to me now. You," she leaned forward, her tone dropping to a chilling softness, "do not belong anywhere." For a moment, Elena couldn't breathe. Her world tilted, her chest constricting as though invisible hands squeezed her lungs. "You can't mean—" "I do," Vivian said. She dabbed her lips with a napkin, as if dismissing Eleanor like one dismisses a fly. "Pack your things. You will leave tonight." Eleanor's chair scraped against the polished wood as she stood abruptly. Her pulse roared in her ears. "Where am I supposed to go?" Vivian rose gracefully, her expression infuriatingly calm. "That is not my concern. You're 21, old enough to make your own way, and if you truly have the strength you claim, then prove it." The cruelty of it left Elena trembling. For years she had endured Vivian's disdain, swallowing her pride, hoping to keep the fragile peace for her father's memory. But tonight there was no peace left, only an abyss opening at her feet. Her eyes burned with unshed tears as she stumbled from the dining room, rushing up the stairs to her room. The room where she had grown up, where she had hidden under the covers during storms, where her father had kissed her forehead goodnight. She opened the closet and stared at the neatly hung dresses, the worn books stacked on the shelf, the photographs pinned to the corkboard fragments of a life that was slipping from her grasp. Her hands shook as she pulled an old duffel bag from under the bed. She stuffed clothes into it blindly, not caring that half of them were wrinkled, not caring that she could barely zip it closed. She reached for a framed photo on the nightstand, her and her father, smiling by the lake, the summer sun catching in their hair. She clutched it to her chest before wrapping it carefully in a sweater and sliding it into the bag. Every sound in the house suddenly seemed amplified. The ticking of the clock, the creak of the floorboards, the distant hum of Vivian's soft humming downstairs. Elena's breath came shallow and fast. She looked around one last time, her heart aching with every memory that seemed to cling to the walls. This was supposed to be her home, but now it was nothing but a gilded cage that had thrown her out. When she descended the stairs, bag slung over her shoulder, Vivian was waiting in the foyer. She looked immaculate, as though she hadn't just shattered someone's world. "You'll thank me one day," Vivian said, her tone almost sweet. "Life will be easier without illusions." Elena clenched her fists. "You're wrong," she said softly, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'll never thank you." Vivian's smile didn't waver. She simply opened the door, the cold night air rushing in. "Goodbye, Elena." The door shut behind her with a finality that echoed in her chest. Elena stepped onto the porch, the night pressing down around her. The street was empty, the lamplight casting long, lonely shadows. She pulled her thin coat tighter around her and began to walk, the weight of the duffel bag digging into her shoulder. She had nowhere to go. No plan, no safety net. Just the dark road stretching ahead and the storm clouds gathering in the distance. And yet, with every step she took away from that house, she felt something she hadn't felt in years' freedom. It was terrifying, yes. But also, just faintly, it was hope. The night swallowed Eleanor whole as she walked along the empty stretch of road. Her duffel bag felt heavier with every step, the thin strap biting into her shoulder. The air was sharp and damp, carrying the faint scent of rain, and in the distance, thunder grumbled like a warning. She had left her stepmother's house behind, but the truth pressed down on her chest. She had no destination. No friend she could call at this hour, no family left to turn to. She had been working at the bakery for just enough money to cover her textbooks and small expenses, but she had never imagined she would be forced out so suddenly. Her father's legacy had been reduced to nothing more than a photograph wrapped in a sweater, now buried in her bag. A gust of wind pushed at her back, carrying with it a fine drizzle. Elena tugged her coat tighter, but the fabric was thin, the chill seeping through easily. She lifted her eyes to the horizon. The road stretched endlessly ahead, empty of cars or people. Every step echoed in the silence, her boots slapping against wet asphalt. She was about to veer off toward a side path she vaguely remembered led into town when she saw it, a glint of light in the darkness. Headlights. Her heart leapt. Relief and fear tangled in her chest. Out here, at night, she knew better than to trust strangers. But what choice did she have? She stepped to the side of the road, clutching her bag strap like a lifeline as the car approached. The vehicle was sleek, black, and powerful, the kind of luxury car she had only ever seen in magazines. Its engine purred rather than roared, smooth and commanding. The headlights washed over her, blinding for a moment, before the car slowed and pulled to a stop a few feet away. Elena froze. The driver's window lowered with an almost theatrical smoothness, and she found herself staring into the dimly lit interior. The man inside looked like he belonged in another world entirely. His suit was dark, perfectly cut, tailored to a body that seemed built on discipline. His hair, black with just the faintest wave, was combed back neatly, but a single rebellious strand had fallen across his forehead. His jawline was sharp, shadowed with stubble that made him look both polished and dangerously rugged. But it was his eyes that caught her breath grey, cold at first glance, yet holding an intensity that made it impossible to look away. "Do you make a habit of wandering down dark roads at night?" His voice was low, smooth, and laced with a hint of amusement. Elena straightened, clutching her bag closer. "Do you make a habit of stopping for strangers?" she countered, surprising even herself with her sharpness. One corner of his mouth twitched as though the answer entertained him. "Not usually," he admitted, "but you looked like you needed help." "I don't." Her chin lifted, though her trembling hands betrayed her. He studied her in silence for a beat too long. Then, "Suit yourself." With that, he began to roll the window up. Panic flickered in her chest. Pride battled with desperation until, at the very last second, she heard herself blurt, "Wait!" The window slid back down. His eyebrow arched, waiting. She swallowed, cheeks burning. I just need a ride. Into town." He considered her carefully, his gaze sweeping over her rain-damp coat, her worn boots, the bag slung over her shoulder. She could feel him weighing something, calculating. Finally, he leaned over and unlocked the passenger door. Elena hesitated, only a moment, before pulling it open and sliding in. The leather seat enveloped her, warm from the car's heating system, the faint scent of cedar, and something darker, his coal. Too exhausted to protest further, Elena followed her down a long hallway, her boots squeaking on the polished floor. "Mrs." Hale led her into a guest room that was larger than her entire bedroom back at the house on Willow Lane. A fire crackled in the hearth, and a bed with thick blankets waited. "There are towels in the bathroom," Mrs. Hale said kindly, "and I'll bring up something hot to drink." Elena murmured her thanks, her throat too tight to say more. When she was alone, she peeled off her soaked clothes and wrapped herself in the towel. Steam rose from the hot shower, and for the first time in hours, she felt warmth seep back into her bones. When she finally slipped beneath the blankets, a tray waited by the bed, tea, biscuits, even a small bowl of soup. She ate slowly, her body trembling with relief. But sleep didn't come easily. She lay awake, staring at the flicker of firelight on the ceiling. Her mind replayed the day Vivian's words, the slam of the door, the rain, and then Damien's voice calling her back into the car. Who was this man who had appeared in her darkest moment? And why, of all people, had he chosen to help her? Down the hall, Damien sat in his study, a glass of whiskey untouched at his side. He stared out at the storm through floor-to-ceiling windows, his thoughts unusually restless. He had told himself it was simple, a stranger in need, nothing more. But the truth was, there had been something in Elena's eyes when he first saw her on that road. Something raw, something familiar. He lifted his glass, but didn't drink. Instead, he whispered her name softly into the empty room. Elena. As the storm raged outside, both of them lay awake in their separate worlds, unaware that the night had just altered the course of their lives forever. Morning came gently, with pale light seeping through the tall windows of the guest room. For a moment, Eleanor lay still beneath the heavy blankets, disoriented. The fire in the hearth had burned low during the night, leaving only faint embers that glowed like fading stars. And then she remembered the storm, Damien's car, this vast mansion that didn't feel real. She sat up slowly, clutching the covers to her chest. Her duffel bag sat in the corner, damp but safe. Everything she owned fit inside it. And yet, The room around her seemed to whisper a different life. A vanity table with crystal perfume bottles, velvet drapes, gold-trimmed mirrors. She didn't belong here. A soft knock at the door startled her. "Miss Elena?" Mrs. Hale's warm voice floated through. "Yes? Breakfast is ready. Would you like me to show you the way?" Elena hesitated, then murmured, "Yes, thank you." She dressed quickly in her driest clothes, tying her damp hair back. Following Mrs. Hale through the endless halls, she felt smaller with each step. The house was alive, with quiet activity maids dusting shelves, a gardener visible through a window tending to wet roses. Everything ran like clockwork, precise and efficient. The dining room stretched long, with windows that overlooked the misty gardens. Damien was already there, seated at the head of the table, a newspaper folded neatly beside his plate. He wore a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled back just enough to reveal strong forearms. His presence filled the room, even in silence. Eleanor hovered at the doorway, unsure if she should enter. Damien glanced up. "You'll starve if you stand there all morning." Heat rose to her cheeks as she stepped inside, lowering herself into the chair nearest the end of the table. A servant appeared immediately, setting a plate of eggs, toast, and fruit in front of her. "Thank you," she whispered, unused to such treatment. Damien returned to his paper, sipping his coffee. For a long moment, the only sound was the clink of cutlery and the soft hum of the rain easing outside. Finally, he spoke. "How did you end up on that road last night?" Eleanor's hand froze on her fork. "I just needed to get away." His eyes flicked to hers, sharp and unrelenting. "From what?" She looked down, her throat tight. "From someone who didn't want me anymore." The words slipped out before she could stop them. She braced for his judgment, but Damien only studied her quietly. After a moment, he folded his newspaper and set it aside. "People reveal their true colours when they think you need them," he said. His voice was calm, but something in it hinted at old wounds. She risked a glance at him. "Is that what happened to you?" For the first time, his mask cracked. A flicker of something dark crossed his face, but then it was gone, hidden behind his usual composure. "Eat your breakfast," he said. Elena lowered her gaze, but curiosity burned in her chest. What scars did he carry behind that sharp gaze? The days that followed blurred into a strange rhythm. Damien left early each morning, his schedule swallowed by meetings and calls. Elena spent her time wandering the vast estate, feeling like a shadow drifting through a world too grand for her. Mrs. Hale fussed over her with gentle affection, pressing warm meals into her hands, offering books from the mansion's library. The staff, though professional, warmed quickly to her presence. She asked their names, remembered them, smiled when she passed them in the halls, things no one had bothered to do in a long time. In the evenings, Damien returned, often late, his shoulders tense with the weight of whatever battles he fought in boardrooms and offices across the city. Sometimes she would find him in the study, a drink untouched beside him, as he stared out at the gardens in silence. One evening, unable to stop herself, she asked, "Do you ever get tired of it?" He looked at her, eyebrow raised. "Of what?" "Being who you are. Always working, always fighting." A faint smirk tugged at his mouth. "You think I have a choice?" "Everyone has a choice. Not everyone." His gaze darkened. "Some of us learned that the hard way." He didn't elaborate, and she didn't press. But his words lingered in her mind long after. A week later, Vivian found hair. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, when Elena had convinced Mrs. Hale to let her help in the kitchen. She was rolling dough with flour-dusted hands when a sharp, familiar voice sliced through the air. "Well, isn't this charming?" Elena froze. The rolling pins slipped from her hands, clattering against the counter. She turned slowly, her heart dropping to her stomach. Vivian stood in the doorway, pristine as ever, her tailored coat spotless despite the drizzle outside. Her smile was a dagger. "What are you doing here?" Elena whispered, her throat dry. Vivian's gaze swept over the kitchen, lingering on the warmth, the laughter of the staff, the ease in Elena's posture. "I could ask you the same. Though it's quite obvious, isn't it? You've wasted no time finding yourself a new benefactor." The staff bristled, sensing the venom in her tone. Mrs. Hale stepped forward, her eyes flashing. "This is a private residence, madam. You can't simply barge in." "It's all right, Mrs. Hale," Elena said quickly, though her voice shook. She stepped closer to Vivian, forcing her spine straight. "What do you want?" Vivian's smile widened. "I came to see for myself. Word travels quickly, you know. People are already whispering about the poor little orphan who landed herself in Damien Cross's mansion. How convenient." Shame and fury battled inside Elena. "It's not like that." "Oh, darling, it's always like that." Vivian's tone dripped with condescension. "Do you think he keeps you here because he's moved by your tragic story? Men like him don't do charity. He's using you. And when he's done, you'll be out on the street again. Just as you deserve." The words stung, cruel in their precision. Vivian knew exactly where to strike. Before Elena could respond, another voice entered the room. Low. Dangerous. "Enough." Damien stood in the doorway, his presence filling the space like a storm. His eyes were steel as they fixed on Vivian. "Who are you to walk into my home and speak to her that way?" Vivian's mask faltered for the briefest moment, but she quickly recovered, smiling sweetly. "I'm simply concerned for Elena's reputation. Surely you understand how it looks her here, alone, with you." Damien stepped closer, his tone icy. "What it looks like is irrelevant. What matters is that she is safe, and as of now, you are trespassing. Leave." Vivian's lips tightened. Her eyes flicked to Elena, narrowing. "This isn't over," she hissed softly, too low for the staff to hear. "You'll regret this." Then, with a sharp turn of her heel, she swept out, her perfume lingering like poison in the air. Elena stood frozen, her chest heaving. Damien's gaze softened slightly as it landed on her. "Are you all right?" She nodded, though her hands trembled. "She won't stop. She'll never stop." His voice was steady, certain. "Then we won't let her win." Something in his certainty wrapped around her like armor. For the first time, she believed she wasn't alone in this fight. Later that night, Elena sat by the fire in her room, the day's confrontation replaying in her mind. Vivian's words echoed, cruel and sharp. But beneath them, another truth stirred. Damien had defended her without hesitation. She thought of the shadows in his eyes when he spoke of betrayal. Whatever ghosts haunted him, they were not so different from her own. For the first time in years, she felt the fragile beginnings of something she hadn't dared hope for. Not just safety, but belonging. The confrontation with Vivian left ripples through the mansion that even the quiet hum of daily life couldn't erase. For days afterward, Eleanor felt herself glancing over her shoulder, half expecting Vivian's perfume to linger in the halls. But it never did. Instead, what lingered was Damien's voice, steady, unyielding. "Then we won't let her win." It was the first time in years someone had spoken. The mansion was quieter than usual. Too quiet. Elena had grown used to its rhythms, the morning bustle of staff, the soft murmur of conversations, Damien's footsteps echoing in the marble halls as he left for work. But now, as late summer slipped toward autumn, silence seemed to linger like an omen. Damien had been spending more hours at the office. "Negotiations," he had explained, his tone clipped. Elena didn't press. She had learned that when he closed a door in conversation, it meant the subject carried weight he wasn't ready to share. Still, a thread of unease wound itself around her heart. She filled her days with the garden, with books, with helping Mrs. Hale in the kitchens. Yet at night, when she curled into the vastness of her room, she could feel the distance between them widening. He had kissed her, yes, and in that kiss she had tasted a possibility brighter than anything she had ever known. But now she wondered if she had imagined it. If perhaps she had been foolish to think a man like Damien Cross could truly choose someone like her. And then Vivian returned. Eleanor saw her first in the city. She had gone into town with Mrs. Hale to pick up fabrics for curtains. On the steps of a glittering boutique, she froze. Vivian stood there, dressed in a sleek dress that cost more than Elena's entire wardrobe, her hand resting possessively on the arm of another woman. "Elena?" Vivian said, her lips curving into that familiar, venomous smile. "How quaint. Still clinging to scraps someone else provides you?" Eleanor's throat tightened. "What are you doing here?" The other woman laughed softly. She was striking tall, poised, with sharp green eyes that glittered like emerald shards. "Vivian, darling, is this the little stray you told me about?" Vivian's smile widened. "Yes, my late husband's charity case. It seems she's found herself a new benefactor." Her eyes gleamed with malice. "Or so she thinks." Elena wanted to speak, to defend herself, but the weight of their gazes pinned her. Vivian leaned closer, her perfume suffocating. "Enjoy it while it lasts, child. Men like Damien Cross don't settle for girls like you. He belongs in our world, not yours." With that, she turned and swept into the boutique, the emerald-eyed woman trailing behind her like a shadow. Elena stood frozen on the steps, the words slicing into her chest. That night, Damien came home late. Elena waited in the library, rehearsing the courage to tell him what had happened. But when he entered, exhaustion shadowing his face, she faltered. "I saw Vivian today," she managed. His jaw tightened. "Where?" "In town." She wasn't alone. Elena hesitated. There was a woman with her. Someone important, I think. Damien's gaze flickered, just for a second. "Cassandra Vale," he muttered. The name carried weight, even to Elena. Cassandra Vale, socialite, heiress, the kind of woman who appeared on magazine covers with the words power and perfection circling her image. "You know her," Elena said softly. "I did," Damien replied, his tone clipped. "Once." Something in his eyes, something unspoken, told her not to ask more. So she nodded, though the unease in her heart deepened. The next week brought storms. Cassandra Vale appeared everywhere. She was at Damien's office, photographed by reporters as she stepped out of his car. She was at charity galas, her arm brushing his as cameras flashed. And she was in the tabloids, her name linked to his with headlines that whispered of rekindled romance. Elena tried to ignore it, to remind herself of the way Damien's hand had lingered on hers, of the softness in his voice when he spoke her name. But doubts crept in. One evening, she found herself on the terrace again, staring at the stars. She didn't hear him until he was beside her. "You're quiet tonight," he said. She forced a smile. "Just thinking." "About what?" "About whether I belong here." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Damien's gaze sharpened. "Who put that thought in your head?" "No one," she lied quickly. But he saw through her. He always did. He reached for her hand, grounding her. "Elena, you do belong here. Don't let Vivian or anyone make you believe otherwise." Her heart swelled at his certainty. Yet even as he spoke, a part of her wondered why Cassandra Vale's name lingered unspoken between them. Vivian struck soon after. It happened during a gala, one of Damien's most important events of the season. Elena had been hesitant to attend, but he insisted, promising she had nothing to fear. She wore a simple gown Mrs. Hale had helped her choose, elegant but understated. For the first time, Elena felt almost radiant, almost enough, until she saw Vivian across the room. The stepmother approached like a predator, Cassandra gliding beside her. Guests turned, whispers following them like perfume. Vivian's smile was all poison. "How charming," she said, her voice carrying just enough for others to hear. "The little mechanic's daughter playing Lady of the Manor." Elena froze. Around them, conversations faltered, eyes turning. Cassandra's laugh was like crystal breaking. "Damien," she purred, sliding closer to him. "Don't you think it's sweet she tries so hard? Though some places, some people, simply don't belong in this world." The humiliation burned hotter than fire. Elena felt the weight of every gaze, every whispered judgment. She wanted to vanish, to disappear into the marble floor. Damien's hand closed around hers, strong, defiant. "She belongs with me," he said firmly. But even as the words rang out, Vivian leaned close, her voice a blade meant only for Elena. "He doesn't know the whole truth, does he? About what you left behind, about the secrets you carry. When he does, he'll see you for what you really are." Eleanor's blood ran cold. "What truth?" Damien asked sharply, catching the last words. Vivian smiled, victorious. "Oh, I'll let her tell you. Unless, of course, she's afraid." The room seemed to spin. Elena's chest tightened. Secrets, yes, she had them. Pieces of her past she had never shared. Things Vivian could twist into poison. And now, under the glittering lights, with Cassandra's eyes watching like a hawk, she felt the ground crumble beneath her. Damien's grip on her hand faltered, just slightly. Enough for Vivian to see. Enough for Elena to feel the first crack. The night of the gala did not end with laughter or music. It ended in silence. Damien left the ballroom early, his jaw set in a way Elena had never seen before. He guided her into the car, but unlike other nights, his hand did not linger over hers, nor did his voice soften to reassure. The silence between them was heavy, stretching like a taut string ready to snap. When they reached the mansion, Elena tried to speak. "Damien, He raised a hand, not unkindly, but firmly. "Not tonight, please." She watched him disappear into his study, the door closing with a finality that echoed through her bones. Alone, she pressed her palms to her face, fighting the tears that burned her eyes. Vivian's words replayed over and over. "He doesn't know the truth. When he does, he'll see you for what you are." What truth? The question gnawed at her. Was it her poverty? The years she had scrubbed oil from her hands in her father's garage? Or something darker, twisted by Vivian's venom? Sleep came fitfully, haunted by visions of Cassandra's glittering smile and Damien's shadowed eyes. The following days unravelled quickly. Damien was distant, not cold, not cruel, never that, but distracted, burdened, his thoughts elsewhere. Cassandra's name began to surface in business reports, her company suddenly entangled in Damien's negotiations. And everywhere, Elena turned magazines, newspapers, whispers among the staff. Cassandra's image loomed, dazzling and dangerous. Mrs. Hale noticed the change in her. "You've lost weight," the housekeeper murmured one morning. "And your eyes, dear, they're tired. You're worrying yourself sick." "I don't know what to do," Elena confessed, her voice breaking. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to stay in his world." Mrs. Hale's hand squeezed hers. "Strength isn't about standing tall when the sun shines. It's about holding on when the storm rages. Don't give up yet." Elena tried. God, she tried. But the storm was only beginning. The trap was clever. Vivian and Cassandra worked in shadows, each playing their role with precision. Cassandra, the elegant socialite, dangled the lure of power and partnership, whispering in Damien's ear about mergers, opportunities. A future that demanded sophistication and stability. Vivian, the serpent, fed poison from the past, painting Elena as a burden, a liability, a girl with secrets too shameful to endure the light. It began with whispers of Elena's father, debts he never paid, rumours of deals gone wrong, stories Vivian twisted until they sounded like crimes. Then came insinuations about Elena herself, letters forged, accounts manipulated, proof that she had sought Damien for his wealth, not his heart. And when the moment was right, Cassandra delivered the final blow. It was a dinner, small and intimate, at Damien's penthouse in the city. Cassandra was there, dressed in emerald silk, her laughter filling the space like champagne bubbles. Elena felt out of place from the start, her simple dress a stark contrast to Cassandra's effortless glamour. Halfway through the meal, Cassandra leaned back in her chair, her eyes glinting. "Damien, I heard something fascinating today. About Elena." Elena froze, her fork trembling in her hand. Damien's gaze sharpened. "What did you hear?" Cassandra smiled sweetly. That her father wasn't just a mechanic, that he was involved in less savoury dealings, and that when the debts piled too high, Eleanor came running to you. Isn't that right, dear? Elena's breath caught. That's not true. Vivian's voice slipped in from the shadows. She had arrived Una. Days bled into weeks, and weeks into months. Eleanor's life became a rhythm of quiet struggle, early mornings at the cafe, long hours on her feet, nights in her small rented room where silence pressed against her like a weight. Yet, within that silence, something was changing. For the first time in her life, she was surviving not because of anyone else's mercy, but because of her own will. Each coin she earned was hers. Each small meal, each night she endured hunger, was a victory carved from her own strength. Still, her heart ached with every beat. Sometimes, on her way home, she would glance at the tall buildings in the distance, imagining Damien behind one of those shining windows. Did he ever think of her? Did he regret? Or had he locked his heart away, choosing Cassandra's world instead? She told herself it didn't matter. She told herself she was moving on. But her dreams betrayed her. In them, Damien's voice whispered her name. His hand reached for hers, only to vanish as she woke to the sound of rain leaking through her cracked ceiling. Damien, meanwhile, had fallen into his own prison. The empire he had built now felt hollow. Each deal struck with an emptiness he could not mask. At parties, cameras flashed, and Cassandra remained glued to his side, but inside he felt nothing but absence. He tried at first to convince himself he had made the right decision. Elena had no place in his world. He had been foolish to think otherwise. But then came the memories. The way she had laughed when grease smeared across her cheek the first time she fixed his car. The way her hands had felt, rough but gentle, when she touched him. The way she had stood up to Vivian, with fire in her eyes, refusing to bow. None of it had been false. None of it had been for money or status. It had been real, and he had thrown it away. One night, after yet another empty gala, Damien returned to his penthouse. Cassandra had lingered, suggesting they continue the night together, but he had brushed her off coldly. When he entered his study, the city lights stretched endlessly before him, mocking his loneliness. He poured himself a drink but couldn't lift it to his lips. Instead, he slammed the glass down, whiskey spilling across the table. "Damn it!" His voice echoed against the walls. His chest tightened, his breath ragged. He pressed his palms against the desk, lowering his head. For the first time in years, the iron walls he had built around himself cracked. "Why didn't I stop her?" he whispered. "Why didn't I fight for her?" The silence answered back, heavier than the guilt pressing down on him. Far across the city, Elena stood at the window of her tiny room, gazing at the same skyline. Her reflection stared back at her in the cracked glass, pale, weary, but alive. She whispered into the night, though no one could hear. Maybe I don't need him to survive. Maybe I never did. But even as she said it, a single tear slid down her cheek. The world moved on, uncaring. But fate had its own plans. Vivian's schemes, though hidden for now, were not invincible. Cassandra's ambitions, though polished with charm, were sharper than glass, ready to cut even Damien himself. And beneath it all, an invisible thread still bound Damien and Elena together, stretched thin by distance and betrayal, but unbroken. For though their hearts were shattered, neither had truly let go. And when the time came, those broken pieces would find their way back or destroy everything in their path.